Hi, Kelsang. How are you?
Hello, Leora. Very well. How are you?
Good. Great. It's hot and lovely here in Israel, a bit too hot for some people.
But you have the beach right behind you in the palm tree, so you can catch a coconut and,
Right behind me, and if I want to have it right next to me, it's not too far, so it's okay.
Wow. Don't
Maybe
make me
not this coconut, but our beach. Hello, Geshe. Good to see you. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I know, right? 2 weeks.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's
not only that we missed last teaching, but during the week we missed you. So
right, yes, I wasn't able. I had to be with my dad. I had to look after her. Well, it's over now, but then I had to catch up with a few other things, so I couldn't join.
So it's 7 by now.
Yep.
So okay. Hello, everybody. Great to be here together again and to have this teaching. We are so very lucky, so very fortunate, and we shouldn't forget it. We are very grateful for it. And if any of us can and wish to express this gratitude, don't forget to push the Dana button. And as much as you wish, as much as you can, you'll be welcome. Those who for them it's difficult, that's fine. That's why we're doing it with Dana. Please feel good about joining, whether you can afford to donate or not. This is why it's done like this. As long as we can share this precious teaching, we are so lucky and happy. And thank you very much, Geshe.
Sure, thank you. All right. Okay, let's start then with a short meditation as usual. Let's just focus on the breath first of all. And then to connect with the enlightened qualities, visualize Buddha Shakyamuni appearing in the space in front of you. Appearing in the form of a monk. And visualize that he's surrounded by all the great beings who attained high realizations and insights into the Buddha's teachings, explaining them for us. There are the great Indian masters, the Nalanda tradition, like Nagarjuna, Buddhapalita, and so forth. They're all the great Tibetan masters. Preserve the teachings in the land of snow. And likewise, realized beings from other traditions, if you like to visualize them. Just think or feel their presence in the space in front of you, even if they don't appear clearly. And then to remind us why we're here, think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. They're seated all around you, wherever there's some space. Filling the horizon. Different living beings with different problems, different worries. Think that although these sentient beings have numerous afflictions, the actual nature of their mind is completely pure and not different to the nature of Buddha's mind. And start off with generating affectionate love, feeling of closeness, acceptance, and affection. For each and every sentient being. Which then gives way to great compassion, since despite the nature of every sentient being's mind, due to their afflictive emotions, they experience endless sufferings. So to generate the aspiration, may all of them be free from suffering and its causes. And may I be able to help them to free themselves from their suffering and its causes. Try to really feel this from the depth of your heart. This deep wish based on love and affection. And your great compassion then grows stronger and gives way to the determination to do whatever it takes to lead sentient beings to a state that is free from suffering, free from the afflictions, such that they experience lasting happiness. So that way generate the altruistic attitude. And then finally, based on the understanding that we can only ever really be effective in our endeavor to ultimately benefit sentient beings if we're fully enlightened. Generate the mind of enlightenment. The deep and sincere aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, so that we have the utmost benefit. We can help sentient beings most effectively. And it's with this determination, with this aspiration, that we also continue to study Chandrakirti's text. And then without letting go of the mind of enlightenment, let's recite the prayers. And really think of the meaning while you recite the prayers. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. In order to deepen, to strengthen your love and compassion, may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then specifically focus to the front visualization. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time. And rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. please remain until the end of cyclic existence. And turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of others to a great enlightenment. Okay, thank you. So let's continue, of course, with the text. But before that, well, we've had a break. Last week I didn't have class. I apologize for that. It was quite a spontaneous decision. I had to take care of my dad, who's in a wheelchair, for about, well, almost 2 weeks. And so I had some flu in between, and it was flu-like symptoms, and it's not COVID. But anyway, I was so tired and exhausted, I just couldn't have class. But anyway, it's all over now, so we'll continue. And I'm pretty sure we can finish the different types of emptiness today. Great, thank you. But before we start with the text, I just want to continue just to remind you of what to do next week or this coming week. Of course, it's still bodhicitta, so we'll continue with this definitely for this week, continuing with also the practice of Donglen, extremely important. And this is, well, however terrible these times are, of course, but this is a good opportunity, gives us a good opportunity to practice this visualization of utilizing the breath, breathing in, visualizing, taking in all the suffering of sentient beings, especially now those affected, of course, by the war, by other conflicts that are happening right now in the world, people who are sick, etc. So to visualize, and not just people who experience very obvious suffering, but to visualize you take on all the suffering, the 3 types of sufferings, whatever obscurations there are, you take it on to yourself. And as you breathe out, you visualize you give all your well-being, all your virtue, everything you give to sentient beings. So it may initially be a little difficult to do that, to visualize it, and just give it time. But also what you should do is that when you breathe in, and you can read about the instructions on, well, it's called giving and taking, or Donglen. That's the Tibetan word. You can read about it as well, so I won't spend that much time explaining it. But if you visualize taking on the suffering of sentient beings, you may visualize it kind of taking it on in the form of black smoke, well, black tar, or whatever you want to visualize. But then also think that as it dissolves into your heart, it completely disappears. So it's not like you're carrying this load of suffering of other sentient beings. No, instead, it dissolves into your heart and it destroys your own self-centeredness, your misapprehension of reality. And then you kind of visualize this enlightened energy coming forth, all these positive qualities that we carry in our mind anyway, in the form of our Buddha nature. And you give this out in the form of white light, white nectar, whichever you want to visualize, and bring sentient beings lasting happiness. So of course, this is not realistic. It's not really what we in actuality do, but it's said to be extremely beneficial in giving us strength, giving us determination. We accumulate a lot of positive potential. And possibly we can, if we have a strong karmic connection to some sentient beings, positively even affect them. It's not going to be effective for all sentient beings, but, well, in the way is in the long run, if of course it prepares our mind towards, well, becoming an enlightened being in that way, like taking on that responsibility and actively visualizing we're really benefiting other sentient beings. But of course, very important for this coming week is to again and again generate the mind of enlightenment. I don't know whether you've been continuing to do this. If you haven't, well, never mind. It's a new week. So again, try as much as you can to generate this mind. And don't forget, the basis for this mind are, of course, love and compassion. It's not just the wish to become enlightened, but it's carried by this deep care, this deep sense of affection and closeness towards sentient beings, and the wish to benefit them, to remove their suffering. And so based on that wish, on that determination, really, then the wish to become a Buddha. So just remind you of that again and again. And watch out, like I said before, in order for it to be the mind of enlightenment, it's all sentient beings. We need to focus on all sentient beings. And we need to be careful that our mind doesn't exclude anyone, which is easily done. I mean, we get upset with people, of course. We resent certain people. I've mentioned, for instance, in this current situation, very naturally, we may have this thought, oh, these decision makers, oh, if they could just die or whatever. Well, we probably have these thoughts every now and then, but to be careful, to be mindful of them arising and not to be carried away by them, just become aware, okay, there was this thought, well, let's apply the antidotes. And this, of course, is not to say that our compassion should only go towards them and not towards these many sentient beings, many people, many animals and so forth suffering right now because of the current situation. No, of course, we totally focus on them as well. But when we feel this resentment and this anger and spite arising, especially kind of aversion and resentment, then we need to make an extra effort and focus on those making the decisions and just put yourself into their shoes. It feels like they have all the control, but they're completely controlled by their own mind, by their afflictions, possibly their greed, their hunger for power, and how lonely and how fearful their life must be because of their actions, and to, well, definitely generate compassion also for them and envelope the, or like, and yeah, like use your love and compassion also to direct it at them, at their situation. So to not leave anyone out. And of course, when we have these thoughts, okay, they arise naturally. There may be resentment, etc., not just towards the decision makers in that situation, but other people as well. So as I said before, we're not approving of their actions in that way. Their actions need to be criticized. These actions need to be, well, we need to counteract them if we can. It's about the person. It's about a sentient being who, like us, wishes to be happy, not to suffer, but in many ways, oftentimes is totally misled by their own mind. Anyway, just especially at this day and age, this gives us a good opportunity to practice Tonglen, and of course to generate the mind of enlightenment again and again. All right, so that's enough for this coming week, and then let's go back to the text. Okay, we just had it. Where did we get to? We got to verse 210, actually. So just quickly to remind you, we've been going through the 16 emptinesses, which we will finish today. We had the emptiness of the inner, the 6 sense faculties, the emptiness of the outer, the 6 sense objects, emptiness of the outer and inner, the physical basis of the sense faculties. We talked about the emptiness of the great immensity, which means space, the emptiness of the ultimate, which is really the Dharmakaya, emptiness of the conditioned, permanent phenomena, emptiness of the unconditioned, permanent phenomena, emptiness of samsara, emptiness, which is described as emptiness of the beginningless and the endless. That's emptiness of samsara, emptiness of that which is not to be discarded, which is emptiness of the universal vehicle, emptiness of all phenomena, so whatever exists, emptiness of defining characteristics, and we started with this, and then of course emptiness of emptiness, which is described as emptiness of emptiness itself, or emptiness of that which is beyond extreme, the middle way. and emptiness of that which is the ultimate nature, the intrinsic or ultimate nature of all phenomena. All right, so we got this far. In that way, we discussed, well, 13 types of emptiness, and we're still with the 14th type, the emptiness of defining characteristics. And as you remember, well, there was a brief presentation of what that meant, and then an extensive explanation. And as part of the extensive explanation, we were told that there's the basis, then there's the path, and the result. So the defining characteristics of basis, path, and result. And of course, based on that, their emptiness. Okay, so of course, in order to understand their emptiness or become aware that they also lack inherent existence, it's good to understand what they refer to. All right, so with the basis, we've learned the basis are the 5 aggregates or the 18 elements or the 12 sense sources, as laid out by the Abhidharma texts. Then you have the path, the emptiness of the path, and here in particular the Bodhisattva path or the path to enlightenment, so the form of the 6 perfections, the 8 concentrative absorptions, 37 factors to enlightenment. Then last time we talked about the 3 doors to liberation and the 8 liberating factors. So I said a lot about them. That should be enough. And today I'd like to talk about the results. So the results, like here in this case, the Mahayana result being qualities of the Buddha. And so the verses starting with 210 discuss these qualities. So I'll just briefly go through them, just mention them. Of course, the qualities of Buddha, there's so many of them, but they're here summarized by way of first talking about what are called 10 powers. So just from the point of view of certain powers, certain abilities that a Buddha has, makes sense that to be effective even as ordinary beings, we need certain powers, certain abilities. So those are explained. Then there are the 4 fearlessnesses. So fearlessness, I think for us, that's also, especially in the 21st century, I guess, I mean, our lives are very much determined or very much controlled by fear. A lot of people experience a lot of fear. But if it's not fear, then people at least experience a lot of, well, a lack of self-confidence or self-assurance, for instance. So the word fearlessness does not just mean being totally free from any kind of fear or anxiety, but it also includes being completely self-assured, being completely self-confident. So no self-doubt whatsoever. Very important quality of a Buddha. So in order to kind of see what is a Buddha like, what am I like? So we definitely have issues with self-confidence and so forth. So that's definitely not an issue in the case of the Buddha. And we'll explain these fearlessnesses. Okay, then the next quality is the perfect knowledge of specific domains, as it's called, perfect knowledge of specific things. Again, very important. I mean, it's our absence of knowledge that is responsible for, well, our situation, our current situation. Then great loving kindness, very important. Great compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Okay, so it's not just the 4 immeasurables, but it's the great version of those. Great love for other sentient beings, great compassion, incredible joy to benefit sentient beings, and a total unbiased state of mind, impartiality, so equanimity. So those are the first 7 kind of qualities, the resultant qualities. And then number 8 are the unshared attributes. So they're of 18 kinds. I'm not going to go, I'm just going to read them. That's it. They're not hard to understand. But these 18 attributes, they're attributes that only a Buddha has. Now, many of the other ones also only a Buddha has. So they're actually overlapping, but it's just describing them from slightly different perspectives. Okay, so to just right away start with verse 210. So the text tells us the 10 powers, and we won't go into them. The reason being that the very last chapter, we're still with the 6th chapter, we're almost at the end of it. We're at the end of it. It'll be done soon. The 6th chapter is followed by another 4, which usually most of these 4, there's like 1 or 2 verses. Very short. They're very short verses, very short chapters. So the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th chapters are very short. 4 chapters to follow. Like I said, only a verse or 2. And then there's this last chapter, it's the 11th chapter, kind of the resultant chapter. And that's got, I think, about 55 verses. And then we're totally done with the entire text. So in there, the 5 powers are actually set forth, which is why we don't need to go into them here. Okay. But anyway, verse 210, what does it tell us? These 10 powers, which will be explained below, they're characterized or defined, if you like, as that which brings utter certainty. Okay, so it brings these 10 powers lead to this utter certainty, self-assurance, self-confidence, while the Savior's 4 fearlessnesses have the nature of total firmness. Okay, so the 10 powers give rise to total certainty. The 4 fearlessnesses have the nature of total firmness, and they're not, of course, contradictory, really. Utter certainty. And then 4 fearlessnesses, well, to explain them, they relate like total fearlessness in the sense of holding on to, of asserting for things, or for also setting forth, for revealing to others 4 aspects. So 4 fearlessnesses, fearlessness first of all. So this actually in the commentary, it's explained in the form of 4 pronouncements, 4 statements the Buddha made. So he's saying, I'm fully awakened, I've perfectly realized all objects of knowledge. So it's about having fearlessness when it comes to excellent realization. So fearlessness in the sense of having no kind of lack of courage to pronounce it, and being completely confident about having realized all phenomena. That's the first fearlessness. So fearlessness with respect to excellent realization, excellent understanding. The next fearlessness is expressed usually by the Buddha kind of pronouncing or stating, I've brought to an end all obstructions together with their imprints, or all pollutants, all afflictions together with their imprints. So the abandonments, the elimination, what the Buddha has eliminated, this excellent elimination, excellent abandonment of that which needs to be overcome in order to become a Buddha. And again, the second fearlessness, total confidence, total fearlessness of the fact of having abandoned whatever needs to be abandoned. So the first one, excellent realization. The second, excellent abandonment. The third fearlessness is that fearlessness in terms of understanding obstructions. What are obstructions? So fearlessness in the sense that knowing that what needs to be overcome are the obstructions. Okay, so the Dharma of having to overcome obstructions. So in that case here, it says, I say that attachment, so on, are the factors that obstruct liberation. So being totally confident with regard to these obstructions, claiming such that they are what keep us from being enlightened. And the last one is that, and this goes along with this pronouncement, like I say that attachment, so on, are factors that obstruct liberation. And then the fourth fearlessness is with regard to, well, the pronouncement being, if one endeavors in these levels and paths that the Buddha has shown, suffering will come to an end. That it's possible to overcome suffering. So fearlessness with regard to the fact that suffering can be overcome. All right, so fearlessness really, in other words, with regard to excellent understanding and realization, fearlessness with regard to excellent abandonment, having abandoned whatever needs to be abandoned, being totally fearless and confident with regard to that, but also being completely fearless and regardless with regard to the fact that there are obstructions, and the obstructions that we have in our life, their attachment and so forth. and that they can be abandoned. That's the fourth fearlessness, that they actually can be abandoned, that there is a possibility of definitely overcoming these. Okay, so that's this firmness or this fearlessness the Buddha possesses. Likewise, the Buddha has perfect knowledge of specific domains. All right, so not just this incredible self-confidence, but also this knowledge of certain things, of certain aspects, domains or certain aspects. Knowledge of Dharma, so phenomena in general, of phenomena. Dharma can of course mean, well, has different meanings. It can mean the teachings, for instance, but in this context, it means everything that exists. So any Dharma, any phenomenon, that's the first aspect, and its meaning. So what it refers to, total knowledge of meaning of each Dharma, what it refers to. So of course, more obvious things, that's not difficult. But again, I mean, it is difficult to know everything there is to know about a tree. I mean, how much do we know about a tree, where it comes from, how it grew over the years, etc. Not that that is so important, but basically, well, the Buddha's mind is in no way obstructed. So there's just nothing that keeps the Buddha's mind from knowing everything that is to be known. So to know a Dharma, a phenomenon, and its meaning, then also knowing etymologies or the meaning of words, because of course we communicate with words. So what is the exact meaning of all the words, all the convention that people use, having exact knowledge of that, which of course is extremely important to teach. And knowledge of confidence, of the confidence the Buddha has himself, him or herself. I mean, well, it's even difficult to use him or her, but anyway, so having total confidence, or knowing, having total knowledge also of his own ability, his own confidence, his or her. Okay, so those specific knowledge of Dharma, of phenomena, their meanings, the meaning of each word that is used, any convention that is used, and knowledge of confidence, of personal confidence. Okay, so therefore, verse 210 set forth the 10 powers and the 4 fearlessnesses together with their defining characteristics, and of course, they lack inherent existence. That's what they're telling us. And then in verse 211, his perfect knowledge of specific domains is defined by absence of deficiency in confidence and so on. So it's defined by the absence of deficiency like absence of knowledge when it comes to, well, dharmas, their meaning, etymologies, and confidence. Okay, then the next 2 lines of verse 211 tell us about loving kindness, the great love or loving kindness of a Buddha. So that which brings about welfare, it's that which wishes for sentient beings, which wants for the welfare, wants for the well-being, the happiness, wishes for all sentient beings to be happy, to experience lasting happiness. That is the defining characteristic of the great love of a Buddha. Great in the sense directed towards all sentient beings, but I guess also the wish, not just the wish for other sentient beings to be happy, but to bring forth this happiness. So that is great loving kindness, extremely important for a Buddha, of course. Then that which protects, then there's great compassion. So that which protects those who suffer defines his great compassion. So here in the case of the Buddha Shakyamuni, so protects those who suffer. Of course, it's great compassion, that wish for others to be free from suffering. It protects other sentient beings, well, in the sense that that is that which motivates a Buddha, of course, to work towards helping sentient beings to overcome suffering. Then there's sympathetic joy. It's defined by utter joy. But what kind of joy? I mean, joy to work for the benefit of all sentient beings, of course. So this sympathetic joy, and the Buddha's equanimity, being completely equal, being completely unbiased, impartial towards all sentient beings. So of course, like when we hear these qualities, we kind of go, yeah, hard to imagine. But of course, if you think, well, great beings that are existent in this world right now, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this sense of definitely love, great compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, I mean, being completely unbiased, always joyful to be there for the benefit of other sentient beings. I mean, to a certain degree, we can actually observe it in His Holiness. Fearlessness, I mean, His Holiness definitely doesn't have a problem with self-confidence. I mean, utter fearlessness. So, I mean, it's hard to imagine these qualities, but we just need to take an example of someone, well, if His Holiness is not enlightened, then really close towards enlightenment. I mean, it's hard to even imagine that His Holiness is not enlightened. It's kind of like, what else does a Buddha have to do? Buddha Shakyamuni did anything further than what His Holiness does, for instance. But anyway, so we can get a glimpse of these qualities, of course, if we observe someone like His Holiness or other great lamas, of course. Anyway, so here you have these four that are usually expressed also in the four immeasurables. But here, not just directed towards immeasurable sentient beings, but towards all sentient beings. So love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And then you have the unshared qualities of a Buddha. Okay, the unshared attributes of the Buddha described as 18 in numbers. They are refined as irremovable. So they're defined, so what's their defining characteristics? Cannot be removed. So they cannot be stolen from the Buddha, but of course, I mean, also unshared in the sense that they're unique to the Buddha, in that you don't have this version, you don't have them, you don't find these different attributes in the continuum of a sentient being. Now, in illuminating the intent, like Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on this text, he lists them. So his body's free of error, it says, that's the first. So they're set forth in by way of 3 sets of 6. Okay, so these 18, just to read them. So being physically free of error. Speech is free of senseless chatter. That's the second. So the first set of 6 is so this body is free of error. His speech is free of senseless chatter. The mind is free of forgetfulness. All right. Then there's the freedom from the absence of meditative equipoise. So in other words, the Buddha is always in the meditative equipoise, realizing the ultimate nature of phenomena. The Buddha never conceptualizes. So the Buddha is free of conceptualizing, apprehending samsara and nirvana as different, as being like totally separate. They're, well, of course, conventionally separate or different, but not as different as they may appear to our mind, as like inherently different entities. So free from that concept. Buddha is totally free from this conceptualization that samsara and nirvana are inherently different. And the Buddha is free of apathy, failing to discriminate the nature of phenomena. So the Buddha always is able to just discern how conventionally phenomena are different. So these are the first 6. And the Buddha is free from impairment in terms of the next 6, impairment in the domains of aspiration, diligence, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, and liberation. So these are the qualities the Buddha at all times has, kind of fully functioning aspiration, diligence, mindfulness, and so forth. And then with respect to the actions of a Buddha, Buddha's body, speech, and mind. So those 3, these are preceded by the attainment of wisdom and follow after wisdom. And in relation to past, future, and present, a Buddha engages with them through his wisdom, free of attachment and without any obstruction. Okay, so it's body, speech, and mind, past, present, and future. So those 6 aspects, with regard to those 6, the Buddha at all times, without any impediment, without any obstruction, works for the benefit of other sentient beings. So these are the unshared attributes of a Buddha. So a Bodhisattva has similitudes, but it doesn't go to the same degree. Okay, it doesn't have the same strength, doesn't have the same purity as those of the Buddha. Now, that's all I want to say about this. about these different qualities. And lastly, well, there's one more, is actually the wisdom of omniscience. Is kind of summarizing all these qualities. So in short, there's the wisdom Buddhism omniscience, which is defined as direct perception of direct experience of all phenomena. And since all other knowing, any other knowing mind by a sentient being remains partial, can never realize all phenomena. So with respect to knowing all phenomena, any other mind that is not an enlightened mind is partial, does never realize all phenomena. It is not held to be a direct perception with regard to all phenomena. Okay, so that's the last kind of quality mentioned here. Now, on one hand, it kind of seems so beyond us, a Buddha's knowledge, a Buddha's, well, unshared attributes. It's kind of so hard to visualize. It doesn't seem to have, it has nothing to do with our own life. It's really hard to kind of be so enthusiastic about it. I mean, it doesn't directly affect us. But then on the other hand, if we want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, we should have some sense of what that means, right? It's like, what does that enlightenment mean? It's like, we keep saying it, we keep praying, we keep thinking it, but what does that really mean? So how effective are we as a Buddha? That total self-confidence, that total knowledge, these powers, these abilities. So we may have our own way of thinking of it, of relating to it, but that can definitely inspire us to have a sense of, I'm kind of reminded of this really beautiful prayer where it says, like, may sentient beings just thinking of me, just saying my name, may all their sufferings go away. So a Buddha actually has that effect on us. And I mean, of course, we can again use the example of some of our lamas when they actually just come into the room and people talk about them. I mean, this is nothing strange in a way. Like even here, sometimes when I talk about this holiness with people who have no knowledge of the Dharma, you can tell like they're affected by it. I mean, sometimes you see tears in their eyes talking about his holiness. So that's the effect it has on them. They just hear about them. Of course, there are others who would not be moved in that way, but often enough, people just hear his holiness's name and they're moved to tears, and then seeing his holiness even more so. Anyway, no need to talk more about it, but sometimes to give it some thought as part of your own reflection. When I say, well, generate the mind of enlightenment, again, for this coming week. And of course, this implied in that is that you start off your day in the morning. Well, I want to become enlightened, generate the mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. May I become a Buddha, and so forth, and give it some thought. What do you think it means to be a Buddha? This fearlessness when it comes to understanding, realization, understanding his or her, well, let's say his, it's just easier to say it, his own qualities, his own abandonments, his own realizations, but also exact knowledge of the obstructions of this, and this is how you can get rid of them. So in terms of his own understanding and abilities, but also how he can benefit others in that way through this knowledge. So total self-confidence. And of course, there's more to it. No hesitation when speaking to people, teaching others, always being there, always wanting to benefit others. No feeling, oh, I'm in a bad mood today, I'm a little bit, I don't know, whatever, I'm not feeling well, I can't do this today, or whatever. None of that. So to really give it some thought, what does it actually mean to be a Buddha through what we learn? And of course, then in that way, wish for it. So that makes it that much stronger to have the aspiration to become enlightened. But of course, what we're talking about is that these qualities, of course, they may appear, wow, they're so amazing, these qualities. And because we find they're so amazing, there's immediately a sense they exist in and of themselves. But what this teaches us here, of course, is they don't exist in and of themselves. They're also merely labeled. They are mental qualities, conventionally mental qualities, conventionally free of certain obscurations that we have right now, but that we can also get rid of. And they've already been, well, purified of these obscurations. And based on them, we call them fearlessness, we call them powers and so forth. But they're also just labeled, just as a Buddha is. So to take into consideration, of course, that here in this particular context. Great. Okay. So having said all this, we're through. I'm not going to say much more about these qualities. Like I said, the 10 powers we'll go through in the very last chapter. And everything else, I think that should be enough. For me, it was more important to talk about the path that we previously went through. This should suffice for now. Okay, so now all that's left is verse 215, which is now a summary of this particular emptiness, emptiness number 14. Of the 16 emptiness, it's emptiness number 14, which is the emptiness of defining characteristics. So let's summarize that which defines, or the defining characteristic of the conditioned, that which is impermanent, and that which defines the unconditioned, that which is permanent, are devoid of themselves. This is the emptiness of defining characteristics. So in other words, he's saying whatever exists is either permanent or impermanent. And whatever is permanent has its defining characteristics. Whatever is impermanent has its defining characteristics. Whatever is permanent has its defining characteristics. And whether permanent or impermanent, none of these phenomena exist in and of themselves. And so this is the emptiness of defining characteristics. All right. Okay. Now, the next emptiness of the 16 is the emptiness of the unobservable. What does that mean? Well, it means the 3 times, past, present, and future. Very fascinating. I mean, especially in the 21st century, time is so important. I think never ever in the past has there be a time when we were obsessed with time. I mean, people didn't know the time. I mean, they watched the sun, they watched the shadow, the sun, that was the result of the sun and so forth. But they never had watches like the way we have nowadays, exactly by a few nanoseconds, they may be off, but we have this very precise ways of knowing what time it is, and we live totally according to our watches. So it's incredible that time is so different, so important and so precious, and it's unobservable. What is time? It plays such a huge part in our life, but it's unobservable. I mean, actually, the 3 times are dependent on each other, obviously. Past, present, and future are dependent on each other. But the past is gone, and the future is not there yet. So it's really unobservable because the past is gone. So how are you going to observe it? When it's there, it's not the past, right? But when it's become the past, it's no longer there. So there's really no time that we can actually ever observe. We can think of it, yes, but we can't observe it. Okay, that's with regard to the present. So anyway, past is gone. Future, not yet there. Not there yet. Once it's there, it's no longer the future. So as long as it's the future, again, you can't observe it. And then all you have is the present moment. So if the present moment, it's definitely dependent on past and future. But if there's never any time we observe past and future, we directly experience it. Let's put it that way. We directly experience it. There's never any time when we do that. Well, in what sense is then the present moment observable if they're dependent on each other? And anyway, if you look at this present moment, how long is this present moment? I mean, how long does it last? Because even this present moment, if you say it's an hour, that's the present moment. But if you say an hour, it has a former moment that's already gone. It's made of a past moment, and it's made of a moment that's about to happen, right? And then you have a present. But this present moment again, so how long? It's like they had, let's say, an hour, so 60 minutes. So where we right now, we're right now at so part of this hour that we're thinking of as the present, part of it is gone and part of it's about to rise. So there's this present, which can again be divided into a part that's gone and a part that's about to arise, and again a present. And you can go smaller and smaller and smaller. What is that moment exactly in the present? Besides the fact that while we're doing this, each present moment is already a past moment, it's gone and become a past moment. So really it's time plays such a huge part in our everyday life, but the present moment, it's like, when we really think of it, yes, we can say, well, I've tried to be in the present. Yeah, we do all that, but we just take that conventional present moment. But when you dig deeper, there's no present moment to be found. And past and future, well, they're dependent on the present moment, and the present moment and past and future, and they're just labeled based on each other, but they don't exist inherently. Okay, so therefore, the unobservable, it lacks inherent existence. So this present moment does not endure. The past and future have no existence. They don't exist right now. And in that, the three cannot be perceived anywhere, right? Anywhere really be observed. You can't. Where can you observe? Show me, point it out. Can't. So they're referred to as the unobservable. Okay? So time, the lack of inherent existence of time. And then 217, this unservability. Oh, maybe, sorry, one more thing I may add to the time. So if you ask, what is time, right? And this whole idea, like some people saying, well, once you're enlightened, time disappears, or time is no longer linear. It may be, I don't know, it may go backwards, or that is also, I don't know, I don't think so. Because time is really just labeled on change, right? Phenomena changing. And I don't think that once you're enlightened, that change goes backwards at some point, that suddenly the future becomes the past or whatever, because change happens in a certain direction. So on a conventional level, a Buddha does not suddenly become a non-enlightened being, doesn't change back. So that would be the future or the past becoming suddenly the future. I mean, that doesn't happen. So I think on the conventional level, time is going to be linear, right? So anyway, just in case you had that doubt, but it's definitely something you may want to debate. But the point is, like, we just label time on the basis of the changes going on around us, which is really interesting. Our perception of time also very much connects to this. If things seem to be the same day by day, time seems to fly. Or looking back, it seems like, whoa, that was a whole month. Whereas if there's a lot happening, a lot of changes, then there's much more of a sense, wow, that was a long month. But okay, no, let's not go into this any further. But yeah, so the emptiness of the unobservable here means the emptiness of time. And then it goes on to say, this unobservability is itself empty of its own being. Yeah, well, it lacks inherent existence. The 3 times lack inherent existence. It does not endure eternally nor disintegrate. Okay, it doesn't inherently endure, nor does it inherently disintegrate. So this is the emptiness of the unobservable. All right, and then the last of the 16 emptinesses is the emptiness of non-things, which is a little weird because really it's referring to things, to impermanent phenomena. We've had conditioned phenomena before, the emptiness of conditioned phenomena, but here impermanent phenomena are not presented from the point of view of being conditions, being causes for their future for their future events or certain future events as conditions, or as being conditioned, as being the result of something that happened in the past, but empty of a composite, in that when you have a result, well, certain causes and conditions come together. They're compounded. There's a composite of causes and conditions. So it's not just one cause, but there are one main cause, if you like. It's not just one main cause, but there are many other conditions that need to come in there. Any situation is always created by some main cause, but also many other conditions. So just thinking of the classic example, you have a seed. That's the main cause of, for instance, a sprout. A barley seed is the main cause of the barley sprout. Conventionally, yes, the main cause, but you need so many other aspects. You need oxygen, you need warmth, you need water and so forth. You need all these other phenomena that enable the seed to transform in such a way that it's at some point no longer called a seed, but a sprout. So therefore, it's a composition, it's this coming together of causes and conditions, but that coming together, that composite also lacks inherent existence. So in a way, a thing, an impermanent phenomenon, a thing is actually a non-thing, in that inherently it's not a thing, right? So here, non-thing refers to, well, inherently, non-inherently existent impermanent things. Right? They're actually non-things in the sense that they're not inherently things. And the emptiness of these impermanent phenomena, here described as non-things, just a little confusing, but anyway, it is that word. So non-things, they lack inherent existence, of course. Okay, so just conventionally, these things come together, etc., causes and conditions, and then we talk of an impermanent phenomena, but it lacks inherent existence. Okay, so those are the 16 emptinesses, the last one being the emptiness of something impermanent. So in this case, described as a non-thing. It's the last of the 16. And now there's a way of taking those 16 and summarizing them, summarizing them into, or bringing them, or including them into only 4. So a summary of these 16 are 4 emptinesses. So in brief, therefore, it says, what are the 4 emptinesses? The emptiness of a non-thing. And here non-thing, different to before, actually means something permanent. The word is now used differently. And then the emptiness of something impermanent. I'm getting confused. First, it's thing. In brief, the term thing. So first, you have the emptiness of things, then the emptiness of non-things, the emptiness of an intrinsic nature, and the emptiness of the transcendent reality. Okay. Now, briefly said, so everything we had before, these 16 phenomena, not talking about their emptiness, but these 16 conventional phenomena, they can be summarized into 4 phenomena, which are things, impermanent things, non-things, permanent phenomena. So these are anything that exists that is a conventional phenomenon. A conventional truth is either permanent or impermanent. So that's included in the first 2. Conventional truth basically are described by the first 2, thing and non-thing, since they describe any conventional truth that's either permanent or impermanent. And then the last 2 describe emptiness. Okay, so emptiness as an intrinsic nature. Emptiness, what is it? Like an intrinsic, yeah, there it is. Emptiness of an intrinsic nature. So seeing emptiness from the point of view of being an ultimate nature, an intrinsic nature, that's also one of the aspects you had as part of the 16 emptinesses. And then emptiness of the transcendent reality. So emptiness from the point of view of being a transcendent reality. Okay, so you have four aspects. You have impermanent phenomena, permanent phenomena, which are all conventional truth. And then you have emptiness. Number 3 and number 4 are a type of emptiness, but emptiness from the point of view of being an intrinsic nature, being a natural aspect of phenomena, and being a transcendent reality, a supreme kind of reality. All right. And all these phenomena lack inherent existence. So it's the emptiness of those 4. And I'll go through them now one by one. Just wanted to give you an overview. Okay, so let's start with verse 219. In brief, the term thing here refers to impermanent phenomena, is used to refer to the 5 aggregates. Now, when you hear the 5 aggregates, usually we think of the 5 aggregates as that which makes up a person. But, and I think I may have mentioned this before, originally when the Buddha talked of the 5 skandhas or the 5 aggregates, it was apparently in the context of describing what is a person made of. What are the composites? What are the constituents, if you like, of a person? The 5 aggregates. But then over time, it became also a way of describing everything that is impermanent. Everything that is changing is part of the 5 aggregates. You may wonder, how is that? Form? Well, form, in the strictest sense of the word, refers to the body aggregate. But in a looser sense of the word, form is another word for physical phenomenon. Form, physical phenomenon. So the first aggregate of form, in a larger sense, includes everything that is physical. Right? So phenomena, the conventional phenomena of this world, well, a lot of them are physical, have a physical nature. And then there are those phenomena that have a mental nature, that are of a mental nature, that are mind or a mental factor. So they're mental. And then all the other phenomena that are neither mind or mental nor physical. For instance, a person. A person is not mental. A person has a mind, has a body, but is not a mind and is not a body. So a person is neither physical nor mental. Okay, a person is another category, and all that is included in the 5 aggregates. So form includes all physical objects. Feeling and discrimination are mental factors. Then there's compositional factors. So person is included in the compositional factor, and then there's consciousness. So in the 5 aggregates, first aggregate includes everything that's physical. Aggregate number 2, 3, and 5, they include everything that is mental. And then compositional factor includes everything. No, sorry, 2, 3, and 5 do not include everything that's physical, that is mental. They include the mental aggregate of feeling, of discrimination, and consciousness. And then compositional factor, everything else. So in a way, you can say the 5 aggregates, they include everything that is impermanent. All right, so in brief, the term thing is used to refer to the 5 aggregates, refers to everything that's impermanent. They're empty of themselves, again, lack inherent existence. And this is called emptiness of things. It's the first of the 4 emptinesses. Then in brief, and it says in brief again and again, because it's a summary, it's a short depiction of the previous 16 ones. In brief, non-thing is used to refer to unconditioned phenomena. Anything that's unconditioned, anything that's permanent. These non-things are empty of themselves. They lack inherent existence, not empty of themselves in literal sense, but empty of existing inherently. And this is the emptiness of non-things. All right, so that's 220. Not difficult to understand, right? Okay, so that's the second of the 4 types of emptiness, the emptiness of permanent things, or emptiness of non-things. And then you have intrinsic nature. You have the intrinsic, you have the emptiness of the intrinsic nature. All right. Just quickly going to go to the part. Yes. So in brief, these the nature here refers to the ultimate nature of things. Okay. So verse 221 tells us the absence of intrinsic nature. So the absence of lack of inherent existence of intrinsic nature is the emptiness of the so-called nature. In that nature is never contrived. Intrinsic nature is the name ascribed to it. So emptiness itself lacks inherent existence. So it's conventionally a nature. It's a conventional nature. Emptiness itself. So emptiness itself, from the point of view of being the nature of phenomena. Okay. So the nature, it's a characteristic, if you like. Nature, the word nature is often used in the sense it's their entity, it's their characteristic. So here in this context, it's a characteristic of phenomena. So-called, it's conventionally the nature, for instance, of me, myself as a person. One of my characteristics is that I lack inherent existence. I've always lacked inherent existence. So it's not contrived. It's not like someone created my lack of inherent existence. So to be contrived would mean someone made it, someone created it. No, it's not contrived. It's always been my nature. My only problem is that I've not recognized it. That's why we're in the situation we're in. We suffer, etc., because we don't recognize this. But that's actually conventionally seen. It's our so-called nature. It's our nature. It's our intrinsic nature. Lack of inherent existence is our intrinsic. It's our natural character. It's a natural characteristic we have, and it's just our inability to perceive it. And that lack of inherent existence, which is our intrinsic nature, well, that also doesn't exist inherently. Okay. All right. So this is what 221 tells us. A little bit complicated, but so the absence of intrinsic nature. So the lack of, and I want to make sure I don't tell you something wrong here. Where is it? The word nature here refers to the ultimate nature of things. Okay. Such a nature is never contrived by anyone, Shravakas and so forth. Okay, that's what I said. It's never contrived. That this nature, the ultimate nature of phenomena, is devoid of intrinsic existence, is described the name emptiness of intrinsic nature. So that this nature, the ultimate nature, which is the ultimate nature of phenomena, is devoid of intrinsic existence. It itself lacks an intrinsic existence. That is ascribed the name, or that is given the name emptiness of intrinsic nature. Okay. So this is how far Lama Tsongkhapa explains this one verse. It's a little bit difficult regarding the words, especially this commentary doesn't use exactly the same words, but in other words, it's saying the lack of inherent existence of intrinsic nature is the emptiness of this so-called intrinsic nature, and that very nature is not created. Therefore, it is intrinsic nature. It's the intrinsic nature, and that's the name ascribed to it. Conventionally, that's what it's called. All right. That's the emptiness of the third aspect, emptiness of the intrinsic nature. And then you have the emptiness, as described in verse 222, the emptiness of the transcendent reality. It's again emptiness, but not seeing emptiness from the point of view of being the intrinsic nature of anything that exists, but being a transcendent reality. And Lama Tsongkhapa very beautifully explains this in his commentary. So that here, of course, the original verse is in Sanskrit. So transcendent reality, or parabhava is the word in Sanskrit. It has three meanings. Okay, so Geshe Thupten Jinpa used the word transcendent reality to translate parabhava, or to translate at least Shengingwubu, I think it's in Tibetan. Shengingwubu, where Shen actually means other, and Wubu means, well, can mean thing, but it can also mean reality or phenomenon, etc. Anyway, so this word transcendent reality, or parabhava, has three meanings. It can mean supreme, other, and transcendent. Right? It can, so one translation was chosen here, but they all have the same meaning, really: supreme, and other, and transcendent. So supreme in the sense it's supreme to anything that is just normal and ordinary. It's other than anything that is normal and ordinary, and it's transcendent. It goes beyond that. So the different things that are described, so emptiness is one. Emptiness goes beyond that. Of course, it's beyond all the conventional aspects, because it's that which we need to realize. It's the ultimate nature of all phenomena. Nirvana is that which we reach. No, first it's emptiness. Emptiness is a transcendent reality here. So here it really refers to emptiness as being transcendent, because that leads to the next supreme or transcendent aspect, that is the wisdom realizing emptiness, which then leads to the third transcendent aspect, which is nirvana. Okay, so the wisdom realizing emptiness direct. So emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness directly, and nirvana, all those are transcendent, but here really transcendent reality refers to emptiness. Okay, so whether the Buddhas appear in the world or whether they do not appear in the world. It doesn't change it, right? Whether there's a Buddha or not, all things are empty. They'll always have been and always will be. And this is proclaimed to be their transcendent reality. This is their ultimate reality. It's beyond to how they ordinarily appear to us. Okay, it transcends that. And this is the perfect endpoint. So nirvana, this leads to nirvana and suchness, an emptiness of transcendent reality. So this leads to nirvana, and it's this suchness and it's the emptiness of this. So here we're looking at the emptiness of this transcendent reality. Okay, so it leads us to, it's this transcendent reality because it leads us to nirvana. It is the suchness, and it also lacks inherent existence. So there's this emptiness of transcendent reality, or I should say better, no, this transcendent reality itself, it has its own emptiness, which leads to the perfect endpoint, which is nirvana. And it is the suchness of this transcendent reality, and therefore it's called the emptiness of transcendent reality. This is how these enumerations, these listings of emptiness are proclaimed in the Perfectional Wisdom Sutras. Okay, that's it. Verse 223, those were the 16 emptinesses and the 4 emptinesses. And now follow, and I'm not going to go through them today, 3 verses. His Holiness cites them a lot. They kind of summarize method, wisdom, conventional, ultimate truth in a very beautiful, poetic way. Like I said, His Holiness cites these 3 almost during every teaching these days. I'll go through them next time. And I'm pretty sure next time we can also start with the next chapter. So really, the next few chapters, we'll finish chapter 6 next time. Then we'll also start 7, 8, depending on how long it takes. It probably won't take long. So maybe next time we can do chapter 7, 8, 9, 10 possibly. And only chapter 11, which is about, like I said, 55 verses, that may take a little longer, but probably not very long. So we're almost done. In other words, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, good. Okay, great. Now, I didn't take as long as I thought. Oh, yes, I did take that long. It is already quarter past, a little bit past quarter past. So allow me to just quickly summarize to make sure you didn't get lost. It sounded really, really complicated, but actually it wasn't. So as I started off saying, I briefly went through the former 14 emptinesses that we had already talked about, and the last of those being the emptiness of defining characteristics. So Chandrakirti spent a lot of time in particular talking about the emptiness of defining characteristics, and in that context, of course, describing the defining characteristics of the basis, the defining characteristics of the path, and the defining characteristics of the result. Okay, so we went through them in some detail in order to understand that they also lack inherent existence. Of course, they're also merely labeled on the basis of their characteristics. So for that, we need to know the characteristics. Today, in particular, we spent a lot of time discussing the resultant states, the 10 powers, the fearlessness of a Buddha, the perfect knowledge, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, the unshared attributes that a Buddha has, and the omniscient mind of a Buddha. So really 9 aspects. We went through them, and of course, they lack inherent existence. So with this, we completed the explanation of the emptiness of the defining characteristics, and all we had left was the emptiness of the unobservable and the emptiness of non-things. So the emptiness of the unobservable, of course, refers to the 3 times. Okay, so the 3 times, they lack inherent existence. And then the last of the 16 is the emptiness of non-things, which is really the emptiness of the compounded phenomena, the impermanent phenomena, from the point of view of being the result of the coming together of many causes and conditions. And all we had left were then the 4 kinds of emptiness. So again, everything kind of is subsumed under the 16 emptinesses can be subsumed under the 4 kinds of emptiness, can be summarized into those. So you have things, non-things, mainly referring to conventional truth, and you have intrinsic nature and transcendent reality, referring to emptiness, and then understanding things, for instance, described by way of the 4 noble truths, by way of the 5 aggregates, everything that is impermanent, lacks inherent existence. Okay, so then everything that is non-thing, everything that is permanent, lacks inherent existence. And emptiness, as seen from the point of view of being an intrinsic nature, a natural characteristic of any type of phenomenon that lacks inherent existence, and emptiness from the point of view of being the transcendent reality, going beyond the ordinary way in which we perceive phenomena, or the ordinary characteristic that we ascribe to phenomena. No, it goes beyond that. So from the perspective of our ordinary mind, it is a transcendent reality that leads to a transcendent mind, the direct realization of that emptiness, and eventually a transcendent state that, from the point of view of our ordinary samsara, is seen as nirvana. Okay, so that's what we went through today. I hope it wasn't too difficult. You always have the chance to ask questions, of course. The 3 times are really fascinating, but I don't think I want to spend much time on it. So if you have a question, you can always ask. You could maybe send a voice message to Dalit, and then she could pass it on to me. So you don't have to write if you find that takes a lot of time and is complicated. So you can always send a voice message, and I'll be happy to address it. But that's it for today. So all we need to do is meditate on it. So let's spend a few minutes, about 15 minutes. I mean, again, over time, but I had your permission to do that. So let's spend 15 minutes to briefly analyze or reflect on what we've gone through. And of course, as always, we start with some breathing meditation before we start the analysis. Now, with regard to the defining characteristics from the point of view of the results, we learned of the powers that a Buddha has, at least 10 different powers. Defining characteristic of which is this complete certainty. And then there's a Buddha's fearlessness, total self-confidence. is characterized by utter firmness. Well, none of those, of course, exist inherently. They're merely labeled on the basis of these characteristics and other aspects. And then, of course, there are Buddha's great love, great compassion, sympathetic joy, and unbiased equanimity. Each of them having their own conventional defining characteristics. Yet they too have no objective, intrinsic existence. And even the unshared attributes of a Buddha that can never be removed from a Buddha's mind and are not even shared with the Bodhisattva. Are basically the highest qualities we ourselves can attain. But they also merely labeled that existing in and of themselves. And the same is true for the omniscient wisdom of a Buddha. That direct perception. Does not exist from the side of the object. It's just labeled on the basis of different moments of awareness. It's objects, a particular type of perception, and so forth. Therefore, defining characteristics from the point of view of being a result, in fact, the highest possible result, does not exist, do not exist in and of themselves. Are just as labeled as any ordinary phenomenon is. And then there is time, consisting of past, present, and future. So important, so precious. Especially at this day and age. The most sophisticated gadgets to precisely tell us the exact time. And yet, being unobservable. The past no longer being around. The future not yet there. And even the present not being observable in any way. And however important time may be in our life, it too is merely labeled on the basis of change or changing phenomena. Without being findable. And objecting it to ultimate analysis. And even all the impermanent phenomena around us that are composites, that are results of the coming together of many causes and conditions. Well, they are not findable either. But are merely designated by our thoughts. On the basis of numerous aspects. And so to summarize, whatever exists, whatever appears to our mind, is either a conventional or an ultimate truth. With conventional truth being either impermanent or permanent. But whether impermanent and categorized or classified into maybe the 5 aggregates, they're merely labeled. And similarly, anything that is permanent does not change moment by moment. Lacks inherent existence. And only exists because there's a conceptual mind labeling it. Even emptiness itself is empty of inherent existence. Whether we understand emptiness as being an intrinsic nature, an uncontrived natural characteristic of anything that exists, or emptiness from the point of view of being a supreme or transcendent reality of phenomena. It too is just labeled. Conventionally leading us to a merely labeled nirvana. And so now, whatever insight that you've gained, whatever feeling has arisen as a result of your analysis, spend a moment single pointedly focusing on that feeling, on that insight, to allow for it to sink deeper into your mind. And then, of course, let's dedicate whatever positive potential we accumulated here together. May it become a cause for us to be able to realize this transcendent reality in order to develop the wisdom, realizing emptiness in order to remove all the obstructions and eventually attain enlightened state of a Buddha. But not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. And in the meantime, may this positive potential also cause our great masters, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all other great lamas and masters, to have an extremely long and healthy life. So that they continue to teach us through their example and their words. And of course, may our merit, our positive potential also affect all other sentient beings, all other beings in this world. To bring more happiness and reduce their suffering. May those who are sick, like Geshe and Talilubin, soon get better. And of course, those suffering and causing the ongoing conflicts find peace in their mind and overcome their suffering. And of course, as Shantideva expresses it in his prayer, may all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain a notion of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with the toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, thank you very much. Don't forget the exercise for this week. Well, it's pretty straightforward, bodhicitta and tonglen. And then I'll see you again next Sunday. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Kishima.
you.
Good
Good
night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Laila